Welcome again to another lecture on object-oriented programming. We are still expounding on objects and classes. All these things we are talking about, friendship, inlining functions, and what have you, we are simply talking about the structure of a class and the member or the members of a class. We have to expound more. These members of a class, what do we do with them? How do we alter their behavior? How do we access? How do we define ABCD? So we are still expounding on the structure of a class and its members. So today we are going to talk about static class members vis-a-vis class variables and functions. I know so far we have talked about statism, whereby you want a variable to retain its value, and you cannot reinitialize it until it goes out of scope or until it runs out of that class. Now, static members of a class, we normally say when the member variables which are declared in a class, that is the data members and the function members, we use another word we call instance variables when we say these are members of a class. What do I mean? Within a class, I have members, and these members are variables, of course, of that class. So we call them their instance variables. They cannot be accessed if I declare them static. They cannot be accessed or they cannot be used to create objects because I have denied that ability for them to be used as object variables. So when I say a class has static members or it has static variables, they are instance of that class. They only operate within that class. They cannot be used to define objects. Therefore, this is one way of saying you are protecting some things so that they just belong to a class only. You know, when I'm talking about protecting them from being used by objects, we understand when you define a class, it is a template for creating objects, and objects can be so many. Objects simply is an instance of a class. Now, an instance, the word instance is like, say, a baby of a class or a child of a class. Now, by saying a class has its variables which cannot be used by objects, I'm simply saying I may have a son, but who has not inherited everything about me. He has inherited some of the things about me, but there are some things about me he or she has not inherited or cannot access, or they are not named as part of. So the things that he has not inherited from me, but I have them within me, they are called instance variables. That means I've denied them to be used by my children or by my instance objects. So that's why we talk of class variables. So they are variables or containers that simply work on a class and not on objects. And these variables can be data variables or can be functions. There are some functions which work within a class, but they cannot work outside, or an object cannot use a function that belongs to that class. Yeah. So when you talk of instant variables here, we simply mean both data variables or data members and function members. You can make them static so that you don't have to pass that legal access to the object. So an example is given there of a class C. It has formal parameters, or no, this class C, which has data members I and J, who are integer type, and then it has some members who are static, like M. It has static member N. Yeah, then it has some functions which are public void zap. Then it has also a static function called void clear. So when you see those members that have been made static, that means they cannot be inherited by objects. So when I'm creating an object of the class C, I can only use those variables that have not been made static. But for the static ones, they cannot be accessed by an object. So for me to access the static members of a class, I'll have to use either another function or another way to access them. As we proceed on, we shall be talking about some other access modifiers. We call them getters and setters, which we modify access to the private members of a class by simply using some functions to access or to set properties. We call them getters and setters. Yeah. So also, let me talk about some words also we use, like constants, enums, and type definition. So these three words, let's define them. So the word constant is an identifier that is associated with a value which cannot be altered. So when I constant a value, simply I'm saying let this value retain its status, or let it not change, let it remain as it is. You cannot assign something else to that value. You cannot alter it. So I constant it. It's very important, and sometimes you constant global variables so that they retain their value throughout the code. The word enum is derived from the word enumeration or enumerated type. It is a type whereby you have a list of constants or a list of values that don't change. So if you have several values that don't change, then you're creating an enum, basically a list of constants. So the syntax will be, you use the keyword enum, and then your variable name, and of course you have to assign the type, then now the constants that you're going to enumerate there, that is from A to Z. So a good example will be like if I have three colors and I want to pick them as one variable, then I'll create a variable called enum color. So color will be made up of red, blue, and green, or red, blue, and green, yes. So simply meaning that red is there in that container, green is there, and blue is there. But they are constants. That means they are not mixed up in their values. Okay. You can have another enum called week. So I'll say a week is made up of 7 days, and these 7 days are Sunday being day 1, Monday being day 2, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like that. So you see the weekdays are constants within a week, and like that. So those are examples of enums. This word called type definition.